Thank you for joining us for another episode of Recovery Stories from the Pandemic. We have Gerald Bowen joining us today. He has a very powerful story. As you can see, he works in healthcare. He's out there during these COVID times helping people, but he also has a powerful story of how he found recovery in the midst of all of this. So thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, Gerald, I want to understand more about your story. Because many times people think that healthcare workers may not fall prey to addiction, but we understand that addiction does not discriminate. It impacts people of all walks of life. So tell me, when did you first realize that you had a problem or that you were struggling?
So back in March when COVID really got bad, I was testing the warehouse workers in my local community where I worked, and I was on my feet almost 12 hours a day, and I just noticed that I was overutilizing my medicine and um, just depending on the medicine too much. And I would run out and I would get sick and I would try to find any um, substitution to help me with the pain and just doing things that I typically would not do.
Mhm. So help me to understand how this started for you, because you mentioned you were taking pain medicine. Did it start from an injury? How did this first begin?
Well, I started taking it from Percocet from my surgery I had maybe back in, I want to say 2016 or 17. And I also have like arthritis in my knees, and I worked for a pain management doctor, and he prescribed me Percocet, and I have plantar fasciitis, so my feet tends to hurt a lot if I'm on them for a long period of time. So I was able to get a prescription from him, and he was refilling them on the regular, and I just started overutilizing them. And it went from one pill a day to three pills a day to over 10. And I just realized one day that it was a problem and I needed to go get help.
Mhm. What made you realize, Gerald, that it was a problem and not just the pain? Because you were dealing, like you said, you had a surgery and you did have pain issues.
hmm Well, at one point, I just became numb. Like I wasn't even feeling pain, but I was just had a schedule. I woke up, I had to take the pain medicine. Before I made it down the highway, I was taking another pain pill. And I have two children, and I typically don't yell at them, don't spank them. And I felt myself just being angry and being mad at them all the time. And not showing my husband all of the attention that he deserves, and just being really upset and angry because either I was coming down off the high or I was running out and didn't know what I was going to do to, get the next peel before my refill. So I just started noticing different situations that made me upset and angry that typically I don't get upset and angry about.
Mhm.
Yes, ma'am. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I was going to just say, as you were saying that, I think what's so interesting is during this time, you're also dealing with the pandemic, right?
Yes.
And helping people because you were a big part of that. So, was
Yes.
this all going on while you were trying to? I know you worked in the pain management clinic, but were you also trying to help with the pandemic and that
Yeah.
kind of during this time?
Yes. We were testing patients every day. I was standing out. I was running the COVID testing basically. We had the little drive up when you can drive up, and the patients will roll their windows down, and I collect all their health information, and then I test them, and then the next car pull up. So it was like a Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 type of thing, and then you had to pack all the tests up and send them off to get tested,
Mhm. So
and
you
then
were doing this and the pain management.
yes, yes.
Wow. So that was just a lot. You were like, I want to be there to serve people. So you were doing both. How did that, do you think, also played a role in your increasing use of the Percocet, of the pain medication?
It just stress, um, different things that would stress me out, as far as patients can be really mean at times and just disrespectful, and you still have to remain professional and understand that everyone was going through some type of stage of depression and just being unpleasant due to the pandemic. And I think a lot of that, for my comfort and just to relieve the stress, and I would just take a Percocet because that my brain was telling me that would make me feel better, So I just began to overutilize the medicine and just
Mhm.
kept pushing through, being on my feet all day and testing the patients and making sure they got their results back in a timely manner. And the phones were constantly ringing, wanting the results. So it became to be very stressful.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, what do you think, Gerald, was the rock bottom for you with this? I know you said, it started out with the one pill, you got up to like taking more than 10 pills a day. What was the real wake up call, rock bottom for you?
Um, Initially, I just was tired of trying to keep up and just maintain, hiding taking the pills and hiding the addiction. And I knew I had a problem, and at the time I thought I was ready, so I went home crying to my husband, just telling him that it's time, I need to get help. It's just getting out of hand. And I went to Oxford Treatment Center in Oxford, Mississippi, and that's when the recovery started.
Hmm.
And
You went to Oxford, you're there and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to just go here for detox. They say, oh, no, no, this is a process. And then you see other people that have been there that maybe have had to come back because addiction, many people don't realize it, but it's a chronic disease like diabetes. And so, some people, they get it the first time, but then there are other people that it takes them multiple times to manage it, to manage the
Mhm.
disease. But you said, okay, I'm going to leave. I got this. I went through a little bit of treatment. And like you said, you ended up relapsing and needing to go and get treatment again to get to the place that you're now almost celebrating 1 year of sobriety. So
Yeah,
congratulations on
thank
that.
you, thank you so much.
Um, but one of the things I kind of wanted to touch on in your story is I know you mentioned that you worked in healthcare, and people think, how does this happen to somebody in healthcare? Um, what would be your thoughts around that?
Um, to me, it can happen to anybody, to be honest. I believe when it happens to a healthcare professional or any professional, we are able to function and be able to present ourselves in a way where people wouldn't even think that we're struggling with an addiction. And we are always the ones to teach the patient, don't you overutilize, don't you take more than you are prescribed. We are great at giving the advice, but not great as far as taking the advice for ourselves and applying it to our everyday lives.
And I can imagine that compounded with all the stress of the pandemic and the things you were facing would make it challenging for most. I know most everyone found it,
Mhm.
challenging during the pandemic. Did you find when you, Gerald, were in the midst of struggling with this Percocet addiction that you did things? I know you mentioned how you treated your kids. Did you ever do anything out of character that you never imagined you would do? Did it ever cause you to have those types of experiences?
Yes, yes, very much so. To do some unethical things that I knew better, and I wouldn't have never done it if I wasn't under the influence or seeking a high. You know, I it just was just some it's just crazy how the addiction works, and how you can just be so caught up in the moment just to get high, basically.
Hmm.
And it may not have been like, meth or um marijuana or anything like that. It's all a drug, you know, and we all use it to seek one common goal, and that's to get high.
Hmm.
So yeah, I was yeah, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. So you feel like what has recovery meant to you during this time? And we're, dealing with potentially another surge of COVID. So what has recovery meant to you and how are you kind of maintaining through these times? What's sustaining you?
To me, I just remembered where I was, and that now that I'm sober, I feel much better. I interact with my kids more, and I just always try to remember that I'm here for a purpose, and that's my kids, and to care for people. And I couldn't do that being under the influence or being addicted to Percocet. And what it also, you need people in your family. You need a family, you need support. And that I had to realize that you can't be ashamed of the addiction, because I wasn't ashamed when I was using, you know, it wasn't no shame to it. So why will I be ashamed to tell someone that I'm recovering, and that um is has helped me grow so much, and that you shouldn't be embarrassed of it, and you have to have someone in your corner. So if you don't have a family, go out and find you one. If you feel like you're going through an addiction, or you need help with your recovery, my family has just been the most amazing support for me.
Hmm. I can imagine that. And what would you, as we wrap up your interview, Gerald, what would you say to someone to even recognize that if they're taking a prescription, like you said, it was given to you legally
Mhm.
and to for pain? So, what would you say to someone, maybe a telltale sign to them that they're struggling with this, with a prescription, and that it's not normal and that they need to probably seek help?
If the bottles say take 2 a day, and you find yourself taking 4 a day, that's your first sign that, hey, something's wrong. Another sign, if you're not in pain and you go back to the doctor and you asking for the refill, even though you know that you're not in pain, but something in your brain is telling you, I like that feeling. I don't want to lose that feeling, and I want more. So those are some signs for me that, I knew that it was going to lead to a problem.
Hmm. And now, what is life like in recovery? What has it been like now?
So it's just been amazing. I've just been able to do more things with my kids and just be a healthier me and just advocate for other people that's going through addiction problems and just being a voice and not being ashamed of what I went through.
No, I think that's huge. And I just so appreciate you, Gerald, sharing your story of, being a healthcare worker who this could happen. You started out needing it for pain, went to the point of you realize, like you said, even if you're taking two more than what's prescribed, that's a warning sign. And then, continuing to do it. But I commend you for seeking help and for getting on the path to recovery and now almost celebrating your 1 year. So we thank you for sharing your story and your experience with us tonight and being willing to be so vulnerable.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.